Hi, everybody. Let's get started. My name is Bethany Davis-Knoll. I'm the Executive Director of the State Energy and Environmental Impact Center. We're hosting this event with the American Constitution Society and are grateful to have you all here for a conversation about opportunities in state AG offices. Before our introductions of our great speakers, I want to take care of a few housekeeping matters. We should have time for some audience questions at the end. Please use the Q&A feature of the webinar to ask questions at any point throughout the event. We ask that everybody engage respectfully and keep the focus on career opportunities and professional development. We appreciate your engagement and we'll save any questions we can't get to for future events. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein, who's going to kick us off. AG Stein was sworn in for his first term as North Carolina's 50th Attorney General in 2017 and for his second term in 2021. As Attorney General, he is focused on protecting North Carolina families from crime and consumer fraud. AG Stein works to protect taxpayers, seniors, students, and military families from fraud. His Department of Justice won awards or settlements of more than $1.5 billion from scam artists. He is working to improve data security and is leading a national effort to combat robocalls. AG Stein is also working to make North Carolina's law enforcement and criminal justice systems fairer, combating the opioids crisis and getting treatment and recovery resources for North Carolinians struggling with addiction, protecting clean air and water, and fighting the teen vaping epidemic. He's previously served as the state senator and as senior deputy attorney general in the North Carolina Department of Justice. And in those roles, he successfully led efforts to put more violent criminals behind bars by expanding the state's DNA database. He wrote the School Safety Act and the Identity Theft Protection Act, and he worked to protect kids from online sexual predators and helped run payday lenders charging loan shark interest rates out of the state. AG Stein grew up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. He is a graduate of Dartmouth College and earned law and public policy degrees from Harvard University. He and his wife, Anna, have 3 children. Thank you, AG Stein, for being here. We're so grateful.
Bethany, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for the introduction. I wish everybody a good afternoon. It's certainly a pleasure to be with you. I want to thank NYU's State Energy and Environmental Impact Center and the American Constitution Society for putting the panel together. And you all are going to hear from some of the dedicated attorneys who work in the offices of my fellow attorneys general from across the country. But before you hear from the panel, I wanted to talk to you a bit about why I think this type of work matters so much. And for me, it starts with who I am and how I was raised. My parents moved the family to Charlotte, North Carolina, right after I was born, so that my father, Adam, could join Julius Chambers and James Ferguson to form North Carolina's first integrated law firm. And that firm is about mid-1960s. They went on to win a number of path-breaking civil rights victories in school desegregation, employment non-discrimination, voting rights, and integration of restaurants, hotels, other public accommodations. Chambers, Fergie, my dad are my heroes because they taught me that our laws and Constitution are meant for the people, for everyone, not just the politically powerful, well-heeled, well-connected, but for everyone. And in my life and work, I have seen how we can make the law work for the people. I've seen it as Attorney General of North Carolina. I've been on the job over 5 years now, honored to have been reelected in 2020. And I am incredibly grateful to the voters of North Carolina, selfishly, because I love the job. I'm able to go to work every day with very talented, dedicated professionals. And we try to protect the people of North Carolina in a host of different ways. We protect families by promoting public safety and fighting crime. We protect seniors, consumers, students from fraud. We protect the air that we breathe and water we drink. We protect taxpayers by holding accountable healthcare providers defrauding the Medicaid system. And we protect people's fundamental rights, their rights to live their lives free of discrimination and their right to vote and to vote in fair districts. So I am biased, no question, but I also believe this is to be true, that the people I work with in my office are some of the best and brightest that the legal profession has to offer. Just a couple of weeks ago, I think last week, my deputy solicitor general argued a case in front of the United States Supreme Court, putting on an excellent defense, an affirmation about our state constitution system of checks and balances. And a couple weeks hence, my Solicitor General will be in the United States Supreme Court trying to persuade the justices to hold up the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill's affirmative action policy. And I can't say the words UNC without a bit of an aside saying, I hope all of you will be rooting for our heels tonight against Kansas. Additionally, in recent weeks and months, attorneys in my office have negotiated the second largest attorney general multi-state settlement in history, the $26 billion national opioid settlement. We successfully held Juul, the e-cigarette company, accountable for addicting North Carolina teenagers to its products, filed an amicus brief to defend North Carolina's child sex abuse laws, defended consumers from potentially predatory buy now, pay later lenders, launched an investigation in TikTok and Instagram about how its practices can be harming young children, teenagers, in a number of different fashions. And we just kicked off a statewide discussion on North Carolina's cannabis laws and policy. And so that's just a snippet of the types of work we do at the Attorney General's office. They are all important and weighty issues that will impact the future of not only North Carolina in many instances, but the entire United States. And the attorneys doing this work aren't in it for the money, clearly, but they're in it because they care deeply. They care deeply about the state, they care about the people, and they care about the future of North Carolina. And so they're putting their immense talents to the task of defending all North Carolinians' rights. And as the person who oversees the office and is responsible for the work of the office, I'm immensely grateful for their service. And the state of North Carolina is far better off because of their unyielding commitment to justice. And I know a number of you are out there deciding what you want to do with your careers. And I hope that you will consider fellowships or careers in offices of Attorney General, whether it's mine, come on down, apply. We would welcome any of you, or in other states, or with local, state, or governmental agencies, including federal. Being an attorney is more than just a job. It is a profession that has ethical responsibilities. And as an attorney, you will be an officer of the court whose duty it is to seek justice and to protect the rule of law. And you have been blessed. You are armed with skills of critical thinking, oral persuasion, hard work. You know what it's like to dedicate yourself to achieve something. And so really, we need you. America needs you to apply those skills that you've been blessed to have, possess, and develop with that spirit of public-mindedness, because we need people like you to participate, to find ways for you to engage your government. I hope that you make your voices heard, and you do so with reverence for our American political system and with respect for core democratic norms, because the government can only function with the consent of the governed. And I have no doubt that all of you are up for that task. And so I want to thank you for your commitment to upholding justice, for allowing me to participate with you today. But more importantly, the roles you play as attorneys and as future attorneys to create stronger communities across the country. We need bright, passionate, public-spirited people to work in the legal profession, in public service, because you will make a difference. That's how we are going to protect our democracy. It's how we're going to protect the people of this country. And it's an incredible honor for me as Attorney General of North Carolina to work alongside my colleagues who are going to be on the panel and addressing you all shortly. And so thank you so much for having me. And I hope that this is an excellent session for all of you.
Thank you, Attorney General Stein. Hi, everyone. I'm Valerie Nannery, Senior Director of Network Advancement at the American Constitution Society. I am pleased to introduce Andy Sue, our moderator, who will get today's panel discussion going. Andy Sue is a legal fellow on the Environmental Defense Fund's U.S. Legal and Regulatory team. He is focused on securing reductions in transportation-related climate pollution and other health-harming emissions through strategic litigation, participation in federal regulatory processes, and policy advocacy. While in law school, Andy was co-president of the UCLA Law ACS chapter and interned with the United States Department of Justice, Earth Justice, and the Environment section of the California Attorney General's Office. Andy has a JD from UCLA Law and a BA in History from Oregon State University. Thank you for being here today, Andy. I'll turn things over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Valerie, and thank you to the State Impact Center and ACS for hosting today's discussion, and thank you to AG Stein and the panelists for joining us today. While many state AG offices job vacancies require at least a few years of experience, honors programs and fellowships are a great way for new attorneys to gain experience and skills working in state attorney general's offices. Our exciting slate of panelists is here to help us understand what some of these opportunities are and what it's like to participate in these programs, and how rising 3Ls, law clerks, and other recent grads can make their applications stand out. So I'm pleased to be joined today with Jessica Leah, the Chief Assistant Attorney General, Professional Development and Public Service Section of the Alaska Department of Law, Travis Royer, an Honors Fellow at the Office of Solicitor General of the Tennessee Attorney General's Office, Jasleen Singh, a counsel at the Brennan Center for Justice and former California Attorney General's Honors Program Attorney, and lastly, Dan Sutton, who's the Deputy Chief of Policy at the Rhode Island Attorney General's Office. And we're going to put the longer bios of our panelists in the chat. So to start the conversation, I'm going to ask Jessica and Dan, can you talk a bit more about what your vision is at your office's Honors Fellowship Program?
Sure, I'll start. This is Jessica Leah. First, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to participate in this forum and share Alaska Department of Law's fellowship program. We have some really exciting developments going on with our fellowship program just recently in January. So this forum is very timely. Riding on the success of our fellowship program, the Alaska Department of Law Civil Division created my new section, which is the Professional Development and Public Service section. This new section is devoted to recruiting, training, and mentoring new talent in Alaska's Department of Law. Our vision is to attract the best and brightest new attorneys, recent graduates, and judicial clerks for work in Alaska's Department of Law. Fellows gain practical, hands-on legal experience in the full range of work handled by our civil division. They work on a wide variety of civil matters from all of our sections, including child protection, natural resources, employment, workers' compensation, torts, public corporations, consumer protection, environment, oil and gas, health and social services, and of course, legislation and regulations. Naturally, those assignments are going to depend mostly on department needs, but my goal is to place people where they're interested. So one of the first things I ask fellows in interviews is what are they interested? Do you have any special practice areas? So what I do is I work closely with all of our section supervisors, because the fact of the matter is there's plenty of work to go around. So work with those section supervisors to find cases that individual fellows have expressed an interest in. Fellows gain experience in civil litigation, administrative hearings, agency advice, appellate practice, drafting documents like drafting regulations or legislation, you name it. Whatever we do, I'm hoping our fellows get the opportunity to do that as well. In addition to carrying their own caseloads, I also try to match fellows with more senior attorneys to gain experience on some of the more complex, higher profile or larger state cases. And that serves lots of purposes. They get to work on those big projects, but they also have the benefit of a mentor, an attorney that's been assigned to mentor on day-to-day work. Our program is a 2-year fellowship, but the ultimate goal is to provide a pathway for fellows to gain specialized knowledge, essential skills, and experience to qualify for permanent employment in the department. So if a fellow finds a special niche or interest in a certain section in our department, before the end of the 2-year program, I'm going to be encouraging them to apply for whatever vacancies. I'm going to be keeping an eye out to help use it as a pipeline into our more permanent positions. And near the end of the fellowship period, we're hoping that each fellow is eligible to apply for any open attorney position within the department. So that's it in a nutshell. And I'm happy to hear from anyone if anyone has questions after this. My contact information will be provided. So thank you so much.
Andy, should I share now?
Yes, thank you, Dan.
Great. So first want to thank the teams at the State Impact Center and ACS for putting the panel together. As Andy mentioned a minute ago, I'm an attorney on the executive team here at the Rhode Island Attorney General's office, and wanted to start by sharing some quick information about our office. We employ about 100 attorneys. We are smaller than most other AG offices, but not the smallest, I think. And we also have a somewhat unique criminal mission. There are no district attorneys here in Rhode Island, so the Attorney General's office prosecutes all felony crimes and has kind of this really broad criminal jurisdiction that I think only Alaska, and Jessica could probably speak to this, and Delaware share with us. So the split in our office of attorneys is about 70% on the criminal side and about 30% on the civil side. And just for everyone's awareness, for most AG offices, it's weighted much more on the civil side. And when my boss, Attorney General Peter Nerona, was elected and took office a little more than 3 years ago, a colleague of mine and I who joined him did a pretty thorough review of the office's talent programs. And we came away with a couple different takeaways. The first is that we had an extremely unpredictable hiring process. We were hiring attorneys only when people left jobs and vacancies emerged. And as a result of that, we weren't getting the best candidates because by then, talented law school grads, folks coming out of clerkships, already had jobs and good ones. And we were getting a lot of applicants who didn't. And then the third thing that we kind of recognized was that our attorney ranks were not as diverse as they should be. And so all of those things led us to designing and creating our relatively or very new honors program, which is a one-year fellowship program where recent grads, clerks, fellows, really kind of anybody that is within that first couple year period out of law school can get placed in either our criminal division or our civil division. And then if things go well, we really in earnest try to find a permanent position for those attorneys. And when attorneys join our office through this program, we aim to treat you like a fully fledged attorney in the office, but at the same point in time, kind of as Jessica alluded to, are really invested in your professional development. And like other programs that we've tried to emulate, we have set up our recruitment in the fall with kind of the plan to make offers that are contingent on taking the bar here in Rhode Island, or a bar that I think, based on how we've got the program structured, is waivable in. And then our honors program attorneys start with us in the subsequent fall. And it is very new. It's literally in its first year now. So in terms of vision for the program, we're very much hoping and looking for it to succeed and grow. And that really is going to depend on us getting a good number of talented applicants. And so we are hoping that we can interest you in our office and the opportunity.
Great, thank you, Jessica and Dan. Next, I have a question for the honors program attorneys. Can you both tell me a little bit about what brought you to the AG office and what your day-to-day work is and was like? And let's start with Jasleen, and then you can jump in, Travis. Thank you.
Sure. And thank you again, everyone, for the opportunity to sort of share my experience. I'm no longer at the California AG's office, but I absolutely loved my experience. I wanted to join the office because I knew I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. And there were generally openings through the honors program in California for the civil rights section. I think one of the things that attracted me there was that I didn't have to work on one single subject matter. I would have the opportunity to work on several different areas of the law, and I ended up being able to do exactly that. So that was a huge factor for me in applying to that specific honors program. I think another thing is that when it comes to AG offices, there's not one sort of type of advocacy that we engage in. And so I got the experience, and even just through interviewing and doing my research, I realized that I would be able to litigate, I would be able to do investigations, and I would be able to do some policy work. And I really wanted to be in a place where I would get a bunch of different kinds of experience, because in law school, yes, I had my internships, yes, I had my clinics, but I was still trying to figure out, like, what is it exactly that I want to do for the rest of my career? And some people know and some people didn't. And I wasn't one of those people who knew exactly the kind of lawyer I wanted to be. And so getting to an AG's office afforded me the opportunity to really engage with a lot of different kinds of advocacy. And I really appreciated that. And so while I was an honors attorney, I was able to litigate, I was able to lead investigations. I traveled California for some of my investigative work. And what I loved is that no one day was really the same. And through all of this, I was able to work on immigration issues, on child sexual abuse, on voting rights, and on COVID relief. And like through all of that work, not only was I joined and like sort of guided by really awesome colleagues, and I will tell you, like, my colleagues were amazing. And I think like government colleagues, anyone that I've worked with in other AG offices, I have nothing but amazing things to say about. But through that work, you're understanding how your state works, which I think is really special. Like, I was born and raised in California, and I got this sort of backstage look into how all of our agencies function, how they work with one another, and who to go to for certain things. We had a great relationship with our governor's office, and that kind of thing. So it was really cool to not only do the work, but also get a better understanding of how my state worked.
It's always encouraging to hear when I have so much similar to say, so there's really not very much to add. But I'm Travis. Thank you again for everyone for putting on this great panel. I am with the Solicitor General's office, which is one of the differences. So rather than civil rights, I knew I really wanted to get into appellate work. I knew that for my story, I was coming off of a clerkship on the Third Circuit, and my singular focus, I had already done a short stint in big law, and actually it was an excellent experience, but I knew I wanted to get my hands dirty with as much substantive appellate work as possible. And I was really fortunate that I had great colleagues that had said, hey, you really should look at fellowship programs, particularly in the appellate space in the SG's offices. So I'm very grateful for that. In terms of the day-to-day life and how that ends up looking, it was exactly what I had hoped for. And I echo so many of the same statements where you are actually getting to take ownership over these projects. And I get to do so much substantive drafting, substantive editing. Another great part is participating in moots for cases going to the state Supreme Court, and then sometimes the United States Supreme Court and other courts of appeals. And you're constantly engaging with important issues and very, very interesting ones. So it's a real treat each and every day. And just to give a taste, I was very excited too by Attorney General Stein's point that his SG's office has two arguments for the Supreme Court, and there's only one state, and they're very interesting and important matters. So it's really neat to get a peek in to what state SG's offices are getting to work on. And as a young attorney, it's hard to imagine a better place.
Great, thank you both. So this next question is for all of our panelists. What courses or other opportunities during law school do you recommend for someone who wants to pursue a career in a state attorney general's office?
Okay, I'll start. I would recommend any hands-on opportunities. If you have the opportunity to participate in an internship or a clinic or a fellowship that, you know, an externship, etc., do it, jump on it. That's the bet. You're going to learn how to think like a lawyer in law school, but you're not necessarily going to learn how to be a lawyer. And I think every opportunity you can to sort of fill that gap is a great opportunity.
I can jump in here after Jessica and mention a couple course-related things. So I think, you know, there are a number of classes that I wound up taking in law school that I actually didn't think would be that useful, but then wound up in the job I'm in now and doing some of the work that I'm doing now, and they turned out to be incredibly useful. And those are kind of all the classes that have to deal with the federal court system, like federal courts, administrative law, First Amendment. These are really the things that are at the bedrock of what a lot of folks in our office are doing on a day-to-day basis. I know some of you, my colleagues here, and certainly AG Stein, have dealt a lot with the pandemic over the last couple of years, and you know that just dragged up stuff that I had heard about and then tucked away in some corner of my mind, you know, several years ago. And but that stuff wound up being incredibly useful. And so I would just encourage you to think about these courses and these kind of experiences if you're in law school and you see yourself wanting to be in this kind of environment.
That was my exact answer. I was going to say that it might seem counterintuitive, but in so much of state attorney general practice would require federal courts. And that is something that is relatively recent, but increasingly important. And I think maybe as an add-on to Dan's point is administrative law, just because you have so many interactions with the federal agencies and understanding that system. And there are, obviously you have a lot of, we have the OSHA appeals and there's some interesting, strange things across different agencies, but there is a lot of similarities. And if you get a familiarity with the APA and other major parts like that, that can be a real asset as you're doing it on state AG practice.
The one answer that I had for law classes to take would have been like an APA class. So I 100% agree. I learned a lot on the job with regard to that. The one thing that I'll add is, I did a lot of recruiting work with the California AG's, the honors program. And I said this every time that I had any sort of seminar, but regardless of whether the goal is the AG's office or some other office, like get as much experience as you can in a variety of places while in law school. Like that is your opportunity to do anything that you sort of want. And whether it's public service or something else, like I didn't realize I wanted to go into government work until I got a government internship. But I started at a public defender's office. Then I went to a small nonprofit, and then I got a government internship. And I said, and like at that point, I was like, this is where I actually want to be. But I had to go through all those different experiences to sort of like figure out where I felt the most right and most like where I felt like where my work could be the most meaningful and feel fulfilling to me. And so I would highly recommend to anyone who's sort of thinking through, how do I get to the AG's office? Like, how do you get to where you want to be as a lawyer? And that's going to be through a variety of experiences.
Great. Thank you all for such great answers. So what advice do you have for a law student or a recent grad who wants to make their honors program or fellowship application stand out? Do you have any advice on application logistics, that sort of thing, et cetera?
Okay, I'll go first again. No, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Jessica.
Okay. I have several ideas to help people. First of all, I am looking at Alaska's applicants, and we are in a very, very unique situation geographically, et cetera. It's off the beaten path. It's beautiful, it's great, but it can be a very challenging place to live. So I'm generally looking for people who have some kind of connection with or demonstrated affinity for or investment in Alaska. It's just, we have to, otherwise we're not going to be successful in our candidates. Also, I extended offers to 5 fellows for our 2022 fellowship this year. All 5 are coming from judicial clerkships. So that's a really great, I think that's a good step to take if that's available to you. I'm also most impressed with those who have taken advantage of opportunities to do real legal work in clinics, internships, et cetera, which I already kind of hinted that that's important to me. And last but not least, do not underestimate your cover letter. Don't treat it as an afterthought. When I make a first pass through, we get a lot of applications. When I make a first pass through, I skim resumes and they all kind of look the same. They're all pretty similar at this point in your careers. But I read cover letters. I actually will read them, and that's an opportunity to show a little bit more about who you are and what you're interested in. And it's really an opportunity to shine and make yourself stand out on a more personal level.
Picking up from where Jessica was there, I think for us and our program, and it's hard to know how true this is for other offices, if you're able to have an open mind about how and where you start your legal career, both kind of in the area of law you start out practicing and geographically where you are, that's something that I think can open some doors for you down the road that otherwise might stay closed. And I say this as somebody who has now seen, a decent number of applications for our first run of this program. And I think, there just kind of is a difference between somebody who comes to us and says that I'm dead set on, let's say, environmental enforcement work, and somebody who is open to, different types of civil enforcement and regulatory enforcement work, or even also criminal work, because it can be easier to go from one part of an office like ours to another part of the office. And before I went to law school, I worked as a paralegal at the Justice Department, and so in DC, and saw a bunch of attorneys there move from the tax division to the antitrust division to the environmental protection division. And meanwhile, heard a bunch of folks on the outside talk about just how difficult it was to get a job in the department. And so I think that's something I would encourage everybody to think about, which is, how much do you want to be in a specific practice area, or how much do you want to be kind of doing generally a certain type of work and then trying to get there?
Similar, again, echoing some of just these prior statements. I think that for our honors fellow class, clerking is a really great experience, but it's certainly not limited to federal clerkships. I think that there are excellent state clerkships, especially state Supreme Courts. I just personally finished a handful of moots, and it's, you get these interesting cases that are like law school exams, and it's just all the time, and it's really, really great work. So all of those, I would say, and it is a very natural transition as well. Something that I would definitely recommend. And then second, unlike Alaska, we found that lots of people want to move to Nashville. And so people are very interested in that, but that provides in a different way. There really is, it is especially important to stand out and say that you are really passionate about some of these ideas. Like I think environmental, consumer protection, for me, it was appellate and other parts, but that is one way of standing out, as well as a real connection to the state and really caring about the good of the state and the good of its people. So I think those are really good ways.
And the only thing I'll add to that is I also sort of had a hand in reviewing applications, and I likewise would review the personal statement first before I looked at the actual resumes. I think that the applications that made a lot of sense to me and that I liked a lot were the ones that made it clear why, like their, like a person's track record for wanting to enter public service work, and had that as like a thorough line in their narrative. And then not only that, but also made clear why at the state level, why with government versus, and not even necessarily versus another practice area, like another, private practice or nonprofit space, but why is it that they were excited to not only be a public service like person, but really why state level work. That's it.
Great, thank you all. And now if any of you have questions that you have for our panelists, please put those in the chat. We're going to move into our kind of Q&A portion of the panel. And I'll kick us off here. Kind of in response to some of that stuff you just said, Jesleen, can you kind of, all of you talk a little more about, how some different ways, and you've talked about this a little bit, but different ways you can kind of demonstrate this interest in kind of public service and public interest and kind of this type of work. You've mentioned, clerking and different public interest type jobs, but can you talk a little more about kind of what you're looking for when you're looking for that interest?
Was that directed at me?
For all of you who answer that.
Jesleen, do you want yeah.
I mean, like, y'all are the folks who are actually reviewing the applications in real time. I just had some sort of experience with it, but I think to me, what really resonated was like people's focus on like wanting to give back to their community in some way. And so whether that was like, sometimes that was folks who like even prior to law school had jobs or volunteer work. Sometimes that was what they did in law school itself. So to me, what really resonated is like a desire to serve others. And I think that just can come in so many different ways and like such a myriad of ways. But making that clear, like, hey, this is what I've done in the past, and this is what has led me to wanting to do this work as my career.
And I think, to add or even go back to something, Jesleen, you said a few minutes ago, having that cohesive narrative present helps a lot, because you can, and I mean, we get these sort of applicants, have somebody who's got a summer associate position at a big law firm in New York, in like a banking and finance practice, but they may be able to tell a story that says that was really helpful for them financially, and that they're using that money to pay off like some debt that they have, because their whole aspiration in kind of becoming a lawyer is to be in public service, to work in a type of job like our office offers. And if that is kind of coherent in the cover letter and like other things that are in there, that's something we can understand. I think it's tougher when you've got a resume and kind of a number of things that stack up one way, and all of a sudden at the end or in a cover letter you say, I'm fully committed to taking a public service position, and we can't really understand kind of where that's coming from.
I tend to, I mean, I personally was one of those students who, even after I graduated, wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. I went to law school with a mission. I had an idea what I wanted to do, but by the time those 3 years were over, that idea was gone. I just fell in love with the law. So, I did the clerkship, and that opened your eyes. And I think just for me, when I'm looking at resumes and I'm looking at applicants, I am looking at this track record, and most of those things, the public service interest, most of the time I'm gonna get a better idea of that in an interview, but it's that past experience and just I don't expect a whole lot of experience at this point. When I'm looking at fellowship applications, I don't expect, I think it's clear when people have taken opportunities, and those opportunities may come in any way, shape, or form. And that's more important to me, is that people have they've showed an interest in getting out there and doing different work. And it may be as simple as moot court competitions in law school on a specific topic. So I think there's no one real way to do it. I think whatever you're doing and you're passionate about it and you're interested and that's what I'm looking for, is just that spark, and it's kind of hard to quantify it, but it when you see it on the cover letter and the resumes, and then you get it validated, or you get a lot more out of the interview. So anyway.
Yeah, I would say too, about you saying what Jessica just said on the being passionate about something, I would say really encourage people to be themselves and not feel like they have to, well, this sounds better or whatever. Just really be honest and say, I love this and this is my thing. It's always refreshing and fun to hear people talk about things that they are passionate about. And I'll say one thing I've always found quite or stands out is if someone has taken the time to publish on a topic. Writing in an academic setting, getting something published is a long process and involves, it's very rare to have done that on something that you're just about. It really is because of the editing and because of thinking deeply and carefully and having a nuanced view on something. That always stands out to me as something to indicate a degree of mastery and a high degree of interest in the area.
Thank you all. And so this next question is somewhat related to that question, in that, when an applicant is applying to an honors program or fellowship, should applicants kind of mention a specific interest in a particular section or highlight a certain background that would really prepare them for that specific section within the AG's office? For example, highlighting your environmental background related to wanting to work in the environment section, or should applicants instead try to highlight kind of a broader interest in public service and the broader interest in the office's work?
I can go as an applicant. I knew, and I think the folks who run their programs may disagree, but I was very sort of pointed about the places that I wanted to work. And I did talk about that and name those places in my application. The California Honors app also has a section where you can list where you're most interested, what sections you're most interested in working in. So I took the route of being sort of giving a few options, but being pretty cabined about what I was interested in doing, because that was honest for me.
I did this. I was similar in that, and the application structure was in the SG's office in particular. But I mean, to soften it, I think I've always had an attitude of saying, being a team player and knowing if there's a need, if there's something, and especially for us with appeals, saying maybe we come in on a trial early, and that's a natural part of the practice. So showing a willingness, and I think teamwork with by everyone in the state office knows that is such an important quality as well. So I think you can express that, but at least that was my experience as well, of being very clear about, this is an area I'm really passionate about applying. I'd like to apply to this position specifically.
I definitely want to know what fellows are interested in doing. That said, our system is set up in a way that it's, like I said, I try really hard to collect work that fellows are specifically interested in, but our system is also set up to create a variety, because I also kind of assume that a lot of our newer attorneys haven't actually had the experience in all these areas. And maybe they don't know they have an interest in it. So I want to also open doors for opportunities that maybe people didn't know they wanted to do, and are more interested, after they've done a few cases in a certain area. Plus, we are, to be successful, our program has to sort of fill gaps where work is needed. So it's a combination. I definitely want to know it. I want to know what people are interested in. That is important to me. And I think that's honest. And I care about that. I want people to be satisfied in the work that they're doing. So that's I'm going to do everything I can to funnel that work in their directions. But I also, being open-minded and open to other work is pretty important to be satisfied and happy in our fellowship program, because that is how it's set up.
I think that combination of open-mindedness and kind of team player mentality that Jessica and Travis were talking about are, along with putting out there some of what your interests are, makes sense to me. And some of it is just dependent on how big the office is, how particular or not specific opportunity is. I think, you know, the California AG's office has a huge number of lawyers, way more than us, and so is able to hire folks directly into antitrust positions, into, you know, tons of people into environmental positions, and we just don't have the same luxury in a smaller office. But I think that that there's kind of a way to weave a fine line there in your application by saying what you're interested in, but then when you're talking to folks, kind of keeping an open mind about it.
Great, thank you all. Shifting topics a little bit, can you talk a little bit more about what, you know, mentorship kind of looks like within the honors or fellowship programs, and, you know, kind of, do you have usually a couple of mentors that are kind of leading you through your early legal career, or is it more just broadly as you're working with different attorneys in the office? So I would love to hear from Jessica and Dan, but also hear your experiences, Travis and Jessen.
We pair each fellow. As a matter of fact, we try to pair every new attorney in our department with someone who's been in the department longer on a formal mentorship program. It depends. Not all attorneys are real interested in having mentors. It depends on where they're at in their careers. I think it's really, really important for newer attorneys. So yes, I don't do it right away because I kind of see my role as being a mentor as well. So I'm the supervisor, but I'm also, I view that in a mentoring capacity. So I want to get to know the fellows because I know other attorneys in the department, and my goal is to match people well so that they're comfortable. They have a mentor. It's a mentoring program that works well. I also encourage people to find their own mentors. You know, find people that you've worked with that are approachable, that you're comfortable going to with questions. So it's a combination of a formal pairing and then of course an informal pairing, because we have so many. We have a very collegial department, so it's not that hard to find somebody that you're going to click with. People are very welcome and they like to help, and especially our more experienced attorneys. And the idea of pairing our fellows with more experienced attorneys, especially in the context of litigation, is that hopefully that attorney you're working with in the litigation will also serve as a mentor. So it's a big picture. For us, it's just a big picture department wide. We want to be mentoring newer attorneys in the department. So
our program is really new, and so I think we are kind of placing our honors program attorneys with their supervisors who currently are also functioning in this mentor capacity. I think we are exploring whether we borrow from what we do for our summer legal interns and find a different attorney that they don't report to and work with, and kind of also pair them with that person as a mentor, but we haven't fully figured that out yet. So we'd be equally interested in hearing from Travis and Jocelyn and anybody else about what's worked well.
Yes, I had actually just jogged my memory, and I said earlier that a lot of what had driven me in or to look at state SG office here in Tennessee and everywhere really was this desire to get substantive work. And then the second piece really was mentorship. Those were two, felt like each time I asked around people, they'd say, best thing as a younger attorney is to get real experience and really do it. And the second is find, if possible, to get in with someone that would really be invested in mentoring, because it is work. Like delegation work is hard. It's a talent, it's a skill. And to really search for that. And on the front end, another part that I don't think I mentioned earlier, but in the states, in state offices, is the opportunity to get arguments too. It's something that is so hard to get, and it can take so long. And having those opportunities are just so key. And that kind of goes in with mentors as well, helping to arrange for that, helping to make that happen. But I know in my experience, it was in the interview process, I got to interview with our Solicitor General, General Blumstein, and then also her deputy, Sarah Campbell, who was here. She has now since joined the state Supreme Court, but those two women were just incredible and had really voiced just an intentionality at mentorship and getting red lines, drafting, and to really learn the practice, which is just, there's so many soft skills even, and so many other parts of just how to be a good lawyer that you learn indirectly through interactions with people. So, and I think too, expressing that, because I think it's a good thing, people want it, and it's good to let people know and say, hey, I would love as much feedback as you can give me. I would really, really enjoy that. And it's a great thing to have.
I was assigned a mentor when I first joined the office, but I think I talked with her more about sort of general things happening as you're like entering a new career, right? What I will say is my colleagues were really, really fantastic about answering like the most silly of questions that I had. A lot of folks talked about like having clerkships or, like their incoming class as clerkships. I did not have a clerkship. Most of the honors attorneys entering the California AGs do not generally have clerkships. And so these really are our first jobs out as lawyers. And so I am very grateful for the sort of atmosphere that I found at the AG's office, because people were very willing to sort of help you think through even logistics things like serving a subpoena, like those kinds of things where you learn about it, you hear about it in law school, but to actually do it as a practicing attorney is a very different thing. And I just found people very willing to spend time sort of helping you out and helping you get through those sort of first few months or year, whatever it is of becoming a lawyer.
Great, thank you all. I think we'll move on to a few last minute lightning round questions. So all of you just quickly give me an answer to the one best piece of advice you have for a law student applicant.
Okay, I would say listen to senior attorneys, but don't be afraid to push back. When you know you've done the research on an issue and you have some questions about their legal analysis, don't be afraid. Tell them, point out the flaws or point it out, because it's amazing how many times a newer attorney with bright eyes has found an issue that I completely didn't even think about. So
I would say it's helpful and worth the extra time, however much you spend on it, to double check your written materials, like your writing sample being the one I can kind of most think of, because I think when other lawyers see things in there that give them any pause, it is just like tough for even those of us that are advocating for someone internally to like get over that hurdle. So I think, a couple hours there is worth a lot on the other end.
I would say get as diverse of an experience in law school through legal work and outside of law school, if you have capacity for that. Get as much of a diversity of experience as you can, because that's going to help you talk about yourself in your application. It's also going to immensely help you answer questions in your interview when you have more experiences to and like a diversity of experiences to pull from.
I think the best I've received, best advice would be that, you know, a lot of people coming out of law school and even in law school, we're good at being self-starters, but also being a self-finisher. And especially in practice, that's something that you can regulate in yourself. And it's so valued and your colleagues will love it. And just, you know, being able to do that, it's a really, really important skill.
Well, thank you all. I think I see we're about out of time, so I will pass it back to Valerie, but thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much, Andy. And I want to thank AG Stein, Jessica, Travis, Jeffleen, and Dan for sharing your experience and advice today. And thank you to the State Impact Center for hosting this event with us. We hope you have a good afternoon.